site law permit that it amends every so often to make changes at the airport. And so because the project is on airport property, we are amending that, and that's a fairly substantial process. And we've also started coordinating with the FAA. We did meet with we met before the Selectman previously on the project, just to introduce the project. We also met with the planning board, I think it was last fall, maybe November time frame, just to introduce the planning board to the project. We're kind of getting ready to file for site plan review. So all this stuff takes time, and in the meantime, we have a good design of the project, particularly working with the DEP to avoid wetlands, vernal pools, those types of things. And we've coordinated with the Maine Natural Areas Program and Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. So all of this has been going on and helping us to kind of refine the project so that we can present it to the town, to the planning board. So that's kind of the status of the project. The other part of the discussion is there's an opportunity for the town of Wiscasset to buy what's called net energy billing credits. That's rather than actually buying power, you're buying credits for power that are produced by the project. So if you were to gather electrons directly from the project, you'd have to be living very close to the project and collecting that power right away. But in fact, the power is being generated onto the grid, and then lots of buyers anywhere in the state can really buy the power. So we have two projects. I do have the slides, I think that were handed out at maybe the August meeting or September meeting on this. But anyway, I also have my business card. So before I get into the slides, and again, I'll be brief. I want to have an opportunity for people to ask questions. What I want to say about the Maine solar program, solar programs are incentivized by state policies. And so that's why you see lots of solar, say, in Massachusetts and not much in Florida, even though the sun power is different in those different locations. It's because the state has enacted legislation that wants to encourage the development of renewable energy. So that's basically what happened in Maine in June of 2019. The legislature passed LD 1711 and the governor signed it into law. So because the law wants to incentivize solar, what it does is it prices the solar for an advantage for customers, which include towns, colleges, cities, community colleges, hospitals, all of these, and private businesses. All of these entities can now, under the law, enter into power purchase agreements to buy this power. So it doesn't matter if the solar project's in Wiscasset, a customer can buy it, they're located in Augusta. So that's just kind of the structure. And the credit system is set up so that the customer acquires the solar energy, which is really the credit. Trying not to get into too much detail. But there's a financial benefit to participating in this program. So what we have here is we have some numbers related to Wiscasset, how much power Wiscasset, the town of Wiscasset consumes, and how much the power purchase agreement that we're offering to the town would be for. So it would be 8 cents per kilowatt hour is what we're offering. The town currently pays different rates based on small commercial generation status. However, that rate is set by the Public Utilities Commission and is tied to the standard offer. This is all, fairly confusing language, but the gist of it is the PUC establishes the price of electricity that CMP and American charge customers, and the solar program is tied to that. And we're able to offer a power purchase agreement to customers at a lower rate than what you're paying now. So then we can talk about the numbers. There might be questions about the numbers. We're willing to go back and look at the numbers, make changes, have further discussions. But the gist of what I'm talking about here is that there's an economic opportunity for customers to not only just buy solar, if that's something the towns want to do, but also to save money on electricity based on the long-term generation solar. The last thing I wanted to say before we open it up, and again, I'm not really going over these numbers too much, and I'm happy to discuss it, but for the two projects that we have that we're building at the airport, we have all of the power is already allocated to customers. Some of those customers are Bowdoin College, Colby College, the town of Scarborough, the city of Portland, and the Waterville Public Schools, and the Falmouth Public Schools. That's just an example of the customers that have already signed agreements to buy the power from the Wiscasset Airport Service. So, again, these are just facts that I'm putting out there. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we see it as an opportunity. And I guess just to finally to say, because the project is being built in the town of Wiscasset, we would like to partner with the town in multiple ways. The project development, we're paying a revenue payment to the town, which can be used to be reinvested in the airport. That's one way the town will benefit from the project. What I'm talking about through a power purchase agreement would be a second opportunity. If the town elected not to proceed, then we would just find another customer. And we have other customers we would like to work with the town of Wiscasset. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Any questions for members of the board? Any questions from anyone in the public? Questions, comments? Yes, would you state your name, please?
I'm not sure I have, Ed Bolivar, Wiscasset. I'm not sure I have so much questions as concerns about the project. At the last meeting, Pam, you asked that I send my whole paper, if you will, Kathy, for distribution to the board. I hope everybody got a copy. I'm not sure. You have one too? Excellent.
You gave it to me a year ago.
Well, this was a recent update, about 6 pages. If anyone wants one, I have 10 copies here, so I'll be glad to give them to anybody. I guess the place for me to start is with the environment. Now, Steve said that this project was 40 acres, and that was confusing to me. The Board of Selectmen sold an option for 50 acres, and then later amended that option to increase it to 70 acres. So I think from the documents that I've seen, the legal documents applicable to the option, there's 70 acres involved. And at the airport, those 70 acres are matured forest. And that's my first concern about the environment. Each acre of a matured forest removes 2.5 tons of CO2, greenhouse gas, from the air in a year. We're talking 70 acres. That's 125 tons per year. Over 30 years, that's 5,200 tons of carbon dioxide. We're going to destroy that. We're going to clear cut that matured forest. So the first question in my mind is this about the clean environment, clean energy, or is it really about money and profit? I'm concerned about destroying 70 acres. That's one of the first thoughts that come to my mind. Secondly, we signed the option, the Board of Selectmen signed the option to lease this property. And as I look at 70 acres of matured forest, I'm saying, hey, that's a town of Wiscasset asset. I tried to find out on my web what an acre of matured forest is worth, and I saw numbers anywhere from $1,500 to $5,600. 70 acres at, let's say, $3,000 an acre is $210,000. And if you're not careful, you will have given away that asset without being compensated for it. So as part of the lease agreement, I think you must pay attention to that asset that Wiscasset has. We should not give that away. I guess if I'm concerned with the environment, there are other clear areas in Wiscasset that are suitable for a solar system. The transfer station has cleared area that cannot be used for the means that could be used for a solar project. The Masons, not the Mason station, the Main Yankee property, cleared property, will never be used for anything else. Another ideal place to put a solar project. And finally, I'm not sure why it's not considered, but we have high voltage power lines all over the place, and the area beneath those lines are kept clear. Another area suitable for a solar project. And yet we are going to destroy 70 acres of matured forest. So that's, I guess, my first concern. If I take a look at the option itself, the Board of Selectmen agreed to the option to lease these 70 acres at $1,000 an acre per year. $70,000 income to the town each year. Over a 30-year period, that $70,000 decreases just because of inflation. $1,000 an acre after 30 years is only $400 at 3%. So you lose something every year. And to me, in the lease agreement, there should be some escalation so that you get the same value each year. You need to consider that in the lease agreement. A little aside, about 3 years ago, one of my friends was very interested in Wiscasset. And it never went very far, and I never did talk about it very much, but he very much wanted to build a helicopter company here in Wiscasset. Now, this was a company that would buy the standard Bell helicopter and modify it for a specific application, police, fire, EMS, whatever, modify it for a specific customer. We looked at land up at the industrial park, put some really rough plans together, and found that the place where we put a parking lot for our employees was a vernal pool. And we said, we're not going to do this. So we began to look at the airport. And as it turned out, he had some major medical issues, had difficulty negotiating with a company that he wanted to buy, and the whole thing died. My point is that you have committed this land at the airport for 30 years for a solar project, and you have given up whatever other opportunities that might relate to the airport and aircraft industry. You've surrendered that. That is gone. Those opportunities will no longer be there. That's something I think you need to keep in mind with respect to the lease. I guess I got kind of confused between the option and the amendment, and I couldn't tell when this thing really does expire. It's a 2-year option, but because of the amendment, I'm not sure legally when it really does end, and what is the date by which they have to exercise the option. It also became confusing to me because you're dealing with, I think, 3 companies as far as the option goes. There's BPA Power and Synergy. I'm not sure the relationship between Synergy and BPA Power or BAP Power. And there were two other companies that were in the amendment. So it almost seemed to me like the town is in a position where they have to negotiate at least 3 contracts, 3 lease agreements with 3 separate companies. And once I realized that, I get concerned with the $1,000 fee you guys said they ain't going to cover the legal fees. You may have already spent $1,000 on legal reviews so far. So I was very concerned that as far as the option itself goes, that was not a good financial deal for the town. Whether you can come to a lease agreement in the next year or so, there's a lot of issues. I hope I mentioned some of them. The power purchase agreement kind of concerned me. I looked back at Steve's pitch back in August, and based on his numbers, tried to calculate what Wiscasset today is paying for electric power. And I ended up with $127 that's a megawatt hour, 12.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And that concerned me when I went and looked at my electric bill. And I'm only paying 7.3 cents per kilowatt hour. I went back and looked at Steve's presentation again and calculated with 7 different numbers, come up to $111 a kilowatt hour. That to me seemed to tell me that Wiscasset is paying far too much for electric power. Now, yeah, there are standard rates. And I couldn't tell what's going on there or not. It seemed to me that Wiscasset today is paying too much. Now, if I'm paying 7.3 cents, and Wiscasset's going to get a hell of a deal at 8 cents a kilowatt hour, I think it's an increase. Because today you should be paying something less than I am with the quantity of electricity that you're using. So that power purchase agreement was a concern. The other concern was that this was another new company. It was MSD Wiscasset LLC. And I don't know if you know anything about those companies. I think there's a certain amount of due diligence you have to do with these companies and understand financially what's going on with this project. I would hate to see us in a position where 30 years from now, assuming those solar panels will last that long, that we have another Mason Station mess. And with LLCs, there's always the possibility that they have no assets, very few assets. And when these things are done, degraded, corrupted, corroded, that they can get up and walk away. And we had that same kind of a situation with Mason Station. And we tried to sue Point East, and we tried to get to the parent, and the assets were all hidden because of all of the structures between the different LLCs. We had a hell of a time just getting our taxes. I'd like that not to happen again. We've done it once, we should not do it again. I hope you got I assume you all got all my questions. I spent some time doing that. If you got any questions of me or Steve, I guess we'll answer them.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Steve?
Because I would like some clarification on 70 versus 40 acres.
It's 40 acres. We started out with 70 acres because we were going to use a single-axis tracking system, which is more efficient. It moves with the sun, so it collects more electricity. But we determined that the amount of permitting and the amount of area that we had to use, initially it looks like there's lots of land, but when you delineate the wetlands and you set back from the wetlands and the shoreland zoning and the vernal pools, we realized that we didn't have that much area, so we wanted the project to be protective of the natural resources. And so it's 40 acres, it's not 70 acres.
Any other questions from the board for Steve? Kim?
Yeah, my understanding at the beginning was that this was not forested land. This was land that we needed to keep clear for air traffic anyway, and so it was kind of like a plus for that reason. Has that changed?
A portion of the project area that's closest to the airport is out of compliance with the FAA safety design policy because of the forest. I wouldn't say that it's the whole project area, but your consultant, Stantec, that works for the airport did a study of the runway safety areas, which are the areas at the ends of the runway, as well as any areas adjacent to the runway, and identified the areas that were out of compliance with FAA safety rules. And they came up with about $1 million to clear all of those areas because of the high cost. And the FAA would give the town a substantial grant, so that's not all of the town's responsibility. The town would be responsible for between 5 and 10% of the total cost of a project like that. So the town, my understanding, I wasn't involved with it, the town decided to move forward with the runway safety areas, the trees that were at the end of the runways, including near the Chewonki campground, which has been of interest for the town. But it didn't cure any of the issues with the forest to the south of the runway. It's still out of compliance. It's still an issue as far as the FAA is concerned. Our project will remove all of those obstructions.
Kathy, you had a question?
Pretty much what you asked, but you're saying it's not quite as much as in this so-called south of the airport runway. How much clearing is going to be done, or that you want to do?
We need to clear 40 acres of land for the project. So there's forest. We will be cutting down 40 acres. It will be a grassland habitat in the future with solar panels on top.
It was my understanding when we were first, and I may be wrong, I may have, misinterpreted, but when we heard the very first proposal and the 40 acres was mentioned, I seem to recollect that they were quite pleased because so much of it was already clear.
That was never the case, so I'm not really sure where that comes from. The project site has not changed since we came to the town initially. It's always been in the same place. One of the reasons why it was selected was because the FAA requires all airports to establish an airport layout plan, which identifies existing facilities and a master plan for what the airport might be in a 20-year period. And over a 20-year period, this land was not identified for any aeronautical uses. And so we work a lot with airports around the country, and those are oftentimes good locations to site projects. So that's why we approach the town.
And would you give me the price again and what you think it will cost to clear this 40 acres?
Well, it's part of the project cost. I'm not really sure exactly.
So they haven't narrowed it down. And
I don't have that information tonight, but it's we can provide that information. I don't think it's not. I think the environmental issues are a subject of discussion. There'll be debate about that. The cost to clear it is just part of the cost for us to develop the project, provide power to our customers.
my other question is not environmental, but the LLCs that are now all of a sudden mentioned in all of this.
Yeah.
That was not the case in the very beginning, I don't think, but there are three of them.
No,
Three LLCs involved in the financing end of it.
two LLCs. There are actually two projects. There's the Wiscasset Airport 1 project, and adjacent to it, the Wiscasset 2 Airport project. The reason why we have two projects is because Maine's solar program establishes a project as a 5 megawatt size. So we have enough land to do two projects. It's possible we could just do one, but we have such a demand for power, we prefer to do two. And we will present to the town two projects for consideration.
Thank you.
Jeff or Sarah, any questions from the town? So could I ask, I would like to know, have we heard any comments from
directly from that. Rick, the airport manager, of course, is very enthusiastic about this project, specifically for the airport. They had to hold a public meeting before they could apply for their state site permits, and there were like 4 people, I think, showed up for that. I think there was like 6 people total on the meeting. They had myself and Steve and myself and the gentleman from California, I think it is. And there were some general questions about heat or light or things of that nature, but I don't believe anybody's spoke up to be absolutely opposed to it.
They're still gonna go through the site application.
Yeah, there'll be a rigorous kind of process through the site plan review, and people can also participate through the DEP site law process as well as the FAA process.
If anybody from the board wants to go through the permits, I have them in my office. They're this thick for each project. So.
Kim, you had something?
I was wondering if we could get from Rick details from the FAA about the out of compliance trees, those 40 acres. Because if what he's saying is true, we will eventually have to clear that, just like we had to take those trees from the Chewonki campground. And you can't fight that. So if we could get that from Rick, that would be useful for my, thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, I believe I've already talked to Dan and Ted about this, actually.
No, I can't understand it.
The clearing of the trees on the side of the runway, that's something that has to be done anyway.
Yeah, the FAA recommended that we clear a certain section, and we have knocked down a lot of them just to, because they did that inspection, so we had to, that's what they wanted, the pre-inspection. So that other side that they're talking about going, there's a lot that's got to be cleared over there too. And we haven't started on that yet.
So how much of the 40 acres that are in question, how much of that, percentage-wise or acreage, how much of that is the part that is not in compliance?
I don't have a firm answer for you. If I had to guess, it would be probably like no more than 10 acres. So maybe about a quarter of the area. So it is part of the project and a benefit, but it's not enough for us to do a project alone.
So 10 acres are non-compliant, the other 30 acres are indeed mature forest.
Oh, even the 10 acres is mature forest. It's just that it's.
But the 30 acres of it are mature forests that are not out of compliance.
Yeah, that's my estimate. I can certainly give you some more detail, but that would be my guess based on my knowledge.
I understand. Ed, you had a question or a comment?
A couple of comments. The non-compliance at the airport, it was my understanding that non-compliance was on the south end of the runway. Those trees have now begun to grow up, and they are in a takeoff zone that needs to be cleared by the FAA. So I was under the impression that was south of the runway. The solar project is east of the runway. Those are two different areas. Yeah, I know we get some non-compliance at the airport, but I believe they're different areas. So that was one comment. And that needs to get straight because things are confusing. The other comment was, if we're now at 40 acres, I would expect that there's going to be an amendment to the options. I'm not sure that's the case. And if there is an amendment to the options, and you're still at $1,000 an acre, you've gone from a $70,000 revenue each year to a $40,000 revenue each year. If there is an amendment to the options, then Ms. Gassett needs to take the opportunity to negotiate that monthly rental. Maybe you can get $2,000 per acre and end up with $80,000 as opposed to a reduction of $40,000. So we need to keep all that in mind as you go forward with some of the negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really didn't want this to get into a back and forth, but number one, I just want to make clear that there are areas to the south of the runway. It's in the Stantec's report, so you can talk to the airport manager about that. There's no discrepancy about that, so I'm telling the truth about The second one was about the lease rate. We have provided the town with an updated lease option reflecting the 40 acres. I don't know if it's been distributed to the public or not, and we are discussing increasing the rate amount to try and accommodate that. But again, you know, I don't know what's been public or not. Certainly, we are working in good faith effort to work with the community on this.
So Dennis, you had something to say?
So, Ed, as I had told you in previous meetings, you know, I understand and share a lot of your concerns. We have retained counsel on this at this point. The net metering agreement actually has already been sent to the town attorney, and I've got part of it back all marked up with questions and concerns that they've had on this. And so, you know, I understand your concerns, but we will do our due diligence on this and make sure that the town is well taken care of.
One more comment.
I understand one more. I guess my concern is long-term for this gas. If these things get corroded, we need to get them replaced, not at our expense. We don't need to go through that again. One of my concerns is that from the data I've looked at, the levelized cost of electricity generated by solar photovoltaic panels is more expensive than the conventional means. Now, people are excited about it. Let's go do this. Let's get clean energy, and that's fine. What I'm afraid will happen here is over a period of time, these companies will try to recover their capital as soon as possible. Now, I think it's great that they've got people lined up and signing PPAs ahead of time. If that doesn't happen, then what will happen very quickly is the solar panel companies will go to the state and say, hey, you got to help me here. I can't get enough customers to make a profit here. The state will then require the grid to buy solar energy first. The grid then says, hey, I've got to buy more expensive energy from the solar panels than I can get from conventional means. They go to the PUC and say, I got to have a rate increase. The PUC says, well, of course, the state requires you to buy that solar energy. The consumer then ends up with a higher rate. But the solar energy is only good during the daytime, and at night, we go to conventional means. During the day, a lot of industry uses electrical energy. The conventional guy is told, I can't buy your power, I got to buy the grid power, buy the solar power. So they start to shut down. And if they can't make a profit, they do just that. We shut down. We're not generating electricity anymore. And the grid says, you can't do that. I got to have power at night. Hey, it's not profitable for me to continue running with conventional power. What do you want me to do? And the grid then